Rajah Caruth will likely return to Spire Motorsports in 2025, and Will Brown is expected to make some select NASCAR Cup Series starts at Rich Choice Racing in 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Blaney's 2025 Dent Wizard paint scheme that we'll see throughout 2025. This scheme's alright in my opinion, very similar to the 2024 scheme. Do like the white, do like the blue. It does look very solid. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack in 2025. And the only other paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Elliott's 2025 Universe scheme that we'll see in 5 or 6 NASCAR Cup events in 2025. I gotta say, this for me is probably the worst paint scheme released so far for 2025. I'm not a big fan of this one. The green just doesn't work for me too much. I wish Universe could do a much better job on their paint schemes. This does not look that great, but we'll see how Chase Elliott can do it. This paint scheme hopefully can run well, but I'm not a big fan and a massive fan of this paint scheme, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2024 Turkey Night Grand Prix, as we had that event a couple nights ago. And there were a lot of big names running the weekend. Ty Gibbs is running, Kyle Larson was running the event, and Kyle Busch was also running the event as well, preparing for the 2025 Chili Bowl Nationals. And there was a little bit of controversy during the main event, with around 20 laps ago, or 50 laps ago I should say, Corey Day got into Kyle Larson and spun him out. But his car was really fast, and he got up to the front, took the lead late in the event, and coming off the corner, Corey Day would come off the corner and pick up his first Turkey Night Grand Prix victory, the 83rd edition of it. Corey Day picked up the win and the victory. Congratulations to Corey Day. Yes, it was a very controversial win for Corey. Corey, though, is one of the best young dirt racers in the world. I know he probably doesn't like winning races that way, getting into people to take them out, but at same time, there's no denying that Corey Day is one of the best talents in the field. He's a really great race car driver. Congratulations to him on getting it done. Congrats to him on winning the race and picking up the victory at Ventura, California. A great and really happy win for him. Congratulations to him on getting it done. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Motorsports Games. As it was reported by Motorsports Games themselves that their DLC and game titles will no longer be available on digital storefront. That means that all DLC that has been available, and of course the games that they've made, things like NASCAR Heat 5, basically NASCAR 21 Ignition, and some of the other stuff they've made part of their catalog like NASCAR Rivals, will no longer be able to be bought on the digital stuff. Now, the good news is for fans of these games, which I don't think there's a lot of people fans of these games at this point, you can still basically play them if you've already bought the DLC. They're not taking it away from you. You're just not going to be, unfortunately, able to buy it anymore. This kind of cuts off a really big thing. A lot of fans, obviously, are not the biggest fan of NASCAR 21 Ignition, but I'm honestly glad that we're kind of done with Motorsports Games at the same time, because Motorsports Games, one of the worst gaming companies out there, they did a terrible job with the IndyCar stuff, never released an IndyCar game like they promised to, and in a nutshell, I think a lot of fans, well, some are definitely disappointed to see this. I've seen a lot of fans saying good riddance at this point. I'm glad to see the Motorsports Games is no longer working with them going forward. I'm glad to see their company's probably going to go bankrupt here in the not-so-distant future as well. So nonetheless, I'm not surprised to see this, unfortunately. It's interesting, though, that it's finally happening where Motorsports Games no longer is doing anything NASCAR. I'm not shocked or surprised to see it, though, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Italian Grand Prix. As it was announced on Wednesday afternoon that the Italian Grand Prix has been officially extended through 2031 and will continue to be competing at Monza through the 2031 season. I believe the contract had either gone through 2025 or 2026, and now it's been extended through 2031. This is really good to see. Monza's been hosting Formula One races for many, many years, since probably the 1970s or the 1980s at least, and now they will continue their partnership. And usually Monza puts on a really solid and really good product. They go back to 2021 when Daniel Ricciardo, of course, picked up that win with McLaren, and we've seen some pretty fun events like the Formula One race earlier this year. I'm glad to see that Monza is going to be sticking around. It's one of the most iconic tracks in motorsports history, and it's really great to see that they're officially bringing it back for 2025 and beyond. I don't think it'll be going anywhere anytime soon down the road and into the future, but glad to see that Monza isn't going anywhere and will be sticking around at least through 2031. I do expect down the road in the future, if people continue showing up to the track, that Monza will stick around on the schedule for many, many years down the road. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Qatar Grand Prix. So earlier today, we had the Qatar Grand Prix for Formula 1. And this race kind of started off with a lot of chaos in the beginning. The first lap, multiple cars ended up crashing. I believe Pierre Gasly ended up wrecking, and a few other drivers in the back of the pack, like Franco Colapino, got caught up in the incident and the wreck after a Turn 1 incident. The safety car would come out for a few laps, and then they got back racing, and Liam Lawson basically wrecked himself. I think he got into Valtteri Bottas and got a little damage on both of their cars, and Liam Lawson got handed a penalty. Meanwhile, later in the race, Lewis Hamilton got handed, I believe, a 5-second time penalty for basically a safety, false start at the race. He got a 5-second penalty that he had to serve on pit road. But all the chaos would happen with around 30 laps in the event when a wing mirror off, I believe, Alex Albon's car would come off and go on the track. Now, for some reason, they never released a virtual safety car or even a main safety car at any time, which I really did not understand that because that's extremely dangerous if you run over it. 4 laps into it, Valtteri Bottas runs over the wing mirror, shrapnel and pieces and debris and all that stuff comes onto the racetrack, and then Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz both end up getting punctured tires and ruining their days. Carlos Sainz did manage to get some points, while Lewis Hamilton lost a chance and opportunity to basically get points. Meanwhile, Lando Norris later in the race would get handed a pretty major penalty and would have to perform not a 10-second time penalty, a 10-second stop and go penalty, meaning he would drop from second position where he had probably the faster car and unfortunately lost a chance to win and still got points at the end of the day, but basically hurt McLaren's chance to basically go ahead and clinch the Constructors' title. Just a mess as a whole for the Zem. For people that run the sport, just terrible officiating throughout the event. But the driver ended up winning was Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen goes back-to-back, basically wins 2 of the last 3 races. Max continues his domination over the course of the last few months, and Max is looking to basically close out the year by winning Abu Dhabi. So congratulations to Max Verstappen on picking up another win. I don't know exactly what number that is for this year or for his career, but Max is definitely getting closer to people like Michael Schumacher and, of course, Lewis Hamilton on the all-time wins list. We'll see if he can go 5 in a row in 2025, but nonetheless, congratulations to Max Verstappen on winning the Qatar Grand Prix, a well-deserved win for him after dominating the event. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about race car uniforms. As it was reported by Matt Weaver and Josh Reum that NASCAR has placed a restriction on pit crew uniforms for the Truck Series in 2025. So according to what's been reported, and Josh Reum brought this up as well, apparently pit crew members in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, they're going to be required to basically purchase new uniforms that are sanctioned by the Truck Series. So you basically can't run sponsored uniforms, I believe, is what was reported on. Which to me, I really don't understand that personally. But then again, you kind of find out from Matt Weaver, he was released some other context to it and was basically told by people that apparently this is something that 24 teams in the series, probably from teams like ThorSport, Tricon Garage, and other big organizations like Spire Motorsports as well, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, they basically voted on for this change to come into play. Why did they do this? Well, it was to basically save teams money. Well, look at the smaller teams. Those teams are going to have to spend a lot more money. Then you have people like Denny Hamlin, Dale Jr., and Kevin Harvick getting involved in it, basically complaining about the stuff and not being a big fan. I know someone, I think John Iacano, I'm pretty sure, was the one who said that Kevin Harvick should be president, and I think Kevin Harvick would probably love to be president of the sport because a lot of things would probably change. I'm not really a big fan of the change, but if the basically people that work in the sport want it, it is what it is, but it's super controversial, right? Because we talk about the cost, right? The Craftsman Truck Series is probably going to have less teams showing up full-time, which is a really big shame because we need teams to show up, and unfortunately a lot of teams have not been showing up full-time, and I think it's only going to get worse because of this change coming into play. Personally, not a massive fan of this. I think that basically they should be allowed to have sponsors. It saves them money to not have to go buy out new uniforms at this point, and to me, I think it's a little bit overkill to basically force the teams to spend so much money, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Gase Motorsports. As it was confirmed on Wednesday afternoon that Joey Gase Motorsports has officially announced Scott Ostien as a part owner of the organization. And they've also confirmed that they will also run 2 cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2025. Scott Ostien, for those who are unaware, owns Qatari Motorsports in the Craftsman Truck Series. It's unknown if that team will be showing up for the 2025 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season, but if they do show up, I'd have to think that Mason Maggio is going to be the driver. And speaking of Mason Maggio, that's one of the drivers that I do expect will be part of this program for 2025, either part-time or full-time. We're not sure at this point. But it's interesting to bring the guy for Qatari Motorsports in who was probably bringing a little bit of money to the group as well. I like seeing new ownership come into play. I remember back earlier this year when Frankie Muniz was rumored to be a part owner of this organization. Now Frankie, of course, driving for Rayom in the Craftsman Truck Series, though, in 2025. Gase Motorsports is one of those teams that's been around for a very, very long time, but hasn't really had a ton of success. So I'm really hoping with the cash that Scott could be bringing in as a part owner who will also be able to help make some decisions for the program, hopefully he can go in there and help that team get a lot better. But if you want my realistic and honest opinion, I'm not expecting this team to be really quick. You look at a lot of the top teams, right? You look at teams like Junior Motorsports, people like Connor Zilic, Carson Quaffle, and Justin Allgaier. Teams like Haas Factory team with Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer. Potentially Chandler Smith in one of those cars. RCR, Austin Hill, and of course, and maybe in the future, Eric Almirola too. You got a lot of big name drivers that are racing in the series, and I just think that it's going to be tougher for them to be super, super competitive. But at the same time, I'm really happy to see a new team getting a new owner. I think it's really exciting stuff, and glad to see a new owner is coming into the program for 2025. Hope we can lead to a lot of success for the team and the program in 2025. And now we're going to ahead jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Esteban Ocon. As it was reported a couple hours ago that Esteban Ocon is not expected to drive for Alpine at the upcoming weekend in Abu Dhabi for the season finale in Formula 1. It's expected that Jack Doohan, who will join Alpine full-time for the 2025 Formula 1 season, he's expected to be the driver for the final event and get a little bit of experience before he officially goes full-time in 2025. This is definitely shocking, but not fully surprising. Look, Esteban Ocon is no longer driving for the program after this year. He'll be going over to Haas F1 in 2025, which I do think that Esteban is going to be somewhat competitive and really, really strong in the 2025 season, because Esteban, I think, is someone who can carry equipment from time to time. Of course, he's won a couple races in Formula 1 at this point, and he's someone, if you give him the right chance and opportunity, he can do a really good job. But as for Jack Doohan, he's being rated up as someone who has a lot of potential to be great. And I think that Jack, especially for someone who I think is super, super talented and has shown a lot of great things in Formula 2, I think he's got a ton of potential to be very, very successful with this team. Now, I think the goal for him is just don't destroy the equipment in the final race and maybe score points in the final race as well, because it can help in the Constructors' title for the team as well. So I'm really hoping that this can lead to a lot of success for them and seeing what Jack Doohan can do. I definitely thought they would let him finish here. There were rumors that one of them was going to be out of the rate for a couple races near the end of the year. Obviously, I think Pierre Gasly is sticking around with this program for 2025, but I do think that Esteban Ocon has a really good chance and opportunity to be good. We'll see what he can do, and we'll see if Esteban Ocon can be competitive. But like I said, he's expected to drive for them at Abu Dhabi this upcoming weekend in Formula 1. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Liberty Media. As it was reported by Adam Stern, I believe on Friday night, that Liberty Media had issues with Andretti. And this also comes from an article from Racer Magazine where I think they did their Q&A very recently. And they also continued on by saying that far too much drama for its liking, and I believe that Cadillac also was not a big fan of it, and the instability of going public about a lot of the issues that they really, really have. Now, when I look at the situation, we obviously know the Cadillac will be joining Formula 1 full-time in 2026, though we do not know the drivers at this time who are going to be getting behind the wheel. But when we see a lot of drama and stuff, obviously, Michael Andretti was very, very bullish out in the media and was very frustrated with the way things they were going. He wanted, of course, get in the Formula 1 a few years ago. They were eventually going to find their way in, but obviously they were denied initially because the FIA was not very happy. Well, the FIA actually initially basically said okay, but the teams in Formula 1 wanted them to pay a massive dilution fee, which we know they're paying, I believe, $600 million or $450 million for that said dilution fee, double what the original dilution fee was going to be. Now, when it comes to the drama of this situation, you know who caused a lot of that drama? Basically, people from Formula 1. They were doing everything they needed to do. They were following all the protocols. They were following all the rules they needed to get in there. So you know who caused a lot of this drama? People like Stefano Domenicali. But now, basically, since Michael Andretti is no longer owning Andretti Global and Dan Towers is basically owning it at this point, they're like, you know what, we don't care at this point. If basically we've gotten into a little bit of beef and we've wanted to get into beef for a while, it doesn't matter at this point, because if they basically like it and they basically want to bring a lot of money in, because I think what they realize is Cadillac is going to bring a lot of money, who cares at this point? Now, of course, Mario Andretti is going to be involved in the program, basically as an advisor, and will be helping with a lot of things, including, I think, helping select some of the drivers for 2026. But I think that Liberty Media should definitely take some blame and responsibility for some of the drama that they specifically caused. I think Liberty Media was definitely one of the big archetypes for these issues and architects for a lot of the problems, and I really don't think they should be blaming Andretti for that. Yes, they went out to the media and were a little bit bullish, I will give you that, but at the same token, same time, I think there definitely needs to be some responsibility handed to the other side of things, because I think they were definitely part of the problem, that being FIA and FOA and all those people part in organizations that were kind of denying them initially. But now I'm glad to see they officially got approved. Hopefully this drama can be cleared away and they can focus going forward on trying to build up a program for 2026, which I certainly think they're going to have a good chance and opportunity to do that in 2026. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about McAnally-Hilgemann Racing. Now, a couple days ago on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, McAnally-Hilgemann Racing put up a tweet indicating they had some merch for Black Friday. If you take a look at this merch, it looks like they're going to be a 4-truck organization in 2025. But the one big thing I noticed is that instead of using the number 43 truck for 2025, it looks like they're going to be using the number 81. Now, the number 81 truck did make some select starts for 2024. They ran it for Corey Day, who made a couple starts in that number 81 truck, I think at Kansas, and also I believe he ran it at Homestead Miami Speedway as well. I think it was Bristol, too, he ran that truck, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, the 81 truck will likely replace the number 43 number for 2025, as of course the 43 had been associated with Daniel Dye over the course of the last couple Truck Series seasons when he drove, of course, for basically GMS in trucks in 2022, and then, of course, in 2023, and then in 2024, of course, he went over to McAnally-Hilgemann Racing. Now, the big question is, who is going to be the last full-time driver for the team? Big things I'm hearing is that maybe Jack Wood could be one of the drivers. Some is indicating maybe Connor Mosack could join this team full-time. Some even said Chase Purdy. I also think Corey Day could also make some select starts, whether it's in the 91 or the 81 truck, or this could also be the All-Star truck for 2025. And maybe we see Zane Smith get behind the wheel, because I had heard that Zane Smith had been in the running at one point for this team, even though Zane Smith most likely is going to be joining Spire Motorsports in the Cup Series in 2025. But I think when you look at this team, it's good they're still going to be a 4-truck organization. Obviously, Dale Hamrick will be behind the wheel of the number 19. And then, of course, you have Tyler Ankrum, who announced about a week or so ago that he'll be back in the number 18 truck for McAnally-Hilgemann in 2025, which I think Tyler Ankrum did a really, really good job. Another thing I could potentially see is drivers from the Chevy camp, like maybe Kyle Larson, like a Chase Elliott perhaps, get behind the wheel. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on who else they decide to choose to get behind the wheel of this number 81 truck for 2025, but it does look like they're going to run the 81. Something it could be Corey Day. To me, I don't think Corey Day should be full-time in the Truck Series. I don't think he's fully ready for that, but I think a few Truck Series starts would definitely not be a bad option for him going into 2025. We're just going to have to kind of wait and see what happens in regards to that. We'll see who ends up getting behind the wheel, but I think there's definitely going to be some big-name drivers who could get behind the wheel of that 81 truck in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Spire Motorsports. Now, if you were on social media a couple days ago, you probably saw something originally from the NASCAR Motorsports account on Instagram. And according to them, it looks like Spire Motorsports has updated their logo for 2025. Now, why could that be? Well, according to the NASCAR Motorsports account, it sounds like that Gamebridge potentially could be getting involved a lot more in Spire Motorsports. Now, we talked about this on the channel, I believe, on Wednesday when I did the last NASCAR news video, that TWG Global, that is owned by Dan Towers and Mark Walter, who owns the Guggenheim brand, they are heavily involved with Spire Motorsports in a pretty big way. And I think the logo change, because remember the original logo change was there's Spire Motorsports in the name. When you take a look at the new logo, there's no longer a Spire Motorsports in there. It's just the blank white and black background with basically the top thing that they've kind of had for many, many years. I think they're obviously looking to get bigger for 2025. We know Spire Motorsports has gotten definitely quicker throughout the 2024 year. They were very good in the Craftsman Truck Series. Nick Sanchez, of course, had a pretty good year because Rev Racing's aligned with Spire. Kyle Busch picked up a few truck wins. Rajah got his first truck win as well. And we saw other drivers like Connor Zilch show a lot of potential in the Truck Series this year. But you look at their Cup program. That program also showed a lot of improvement, and they're going to be a better team in 2025. Carson Osborne, I think, is going to be quicker. Michael McDowell is joining, and Michael McDowell is a driver who really can carry and make equipment a lot faster. And then I think, of course, of how good I think the other people like Matt McCall coming in and Ronnie Chose and Justin Haley working together full time. I think that's going to lead to this team having a ton of success and a lot of potential for this program to be very, very strong next year. And I think this organization is only going to get better. I think their truck program is going to be strong. I would not be surprised if one of the truck drivers ends up winning the championship. We don't know fully at this time who could be the drivers. We've heard Parker Retzline. We've heard Kaz Grall's name mentioned. Andres Perez-Valor is another name that we've heard as a potential possibility. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be very fun to see who ends up getting behind the wheel of it. I think it's cool to see that a new logo is coming into play for the program as the organization is looking to grow, which I truly think that this organization is going to have a lot of potential to really take that next big step forward and grow as an organization. I think big things are on the horizon for this organization headed into 2025. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Full Speed. As it was reported about what's on Netflix a couple days ago on Thanksgiving, that it sounds like the second season of NASCAR Full Speed is expected to come to Netflix on April 2025. Of course, the first season of NASCAR Full Speed came out, I believe, a week before the Daytona 500, which kind of explained what happened in the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series Plus to get everyone refreshed for 2024. And the goal then was to try to attract some new fans into the sport, which I think it did that for a couple weeks as ratings early in the season, despite the Daytona 500 being down a little bit, the ratings were definitely still a little bit up for the beginning of 2024, leading the ratings to be up by 1 or 2% by the end of the 2024 year. Here's my issue with this. I'm glad to see a second season of NASCAR Full Speed is officially going to be coming. My big issue with this is the fact that this is being scheduled after the Daytona 500 and in the middle of the season. We're only going to be 9 or 10 weeks into the NASCAR Cup Series season. I think it would have been wise for them to basically push this a little bit earlier in the year. I do have some theories why it's being pushed a little bit later in the year. Number one, Netflix is probably going to be crowded around that time. Drive to Survive, I think, is another season schedule coming up really soon, which I think is one of the reasons why this is being pushed back a little bit farther. The second big thing is the lawsuit. I think 2011 and Spire Motorsports definitely did play a role in this. Of course, both did have some, or basically, both of them did not make the playoffs, but 2011 Racing, basically Tyler Reddick was a championship contender, and it's rumored that basically 2011 was one of those teams that, of course, they didn't sign the charter stuff, but of course, they're suing NASCAR at the moment, and one thing that could have come up to play is the fact they maybe not share as much of the information and be as in-depth as they were in the previous and prior season. So I think that definitely played a role. Again, my big problem here is the fact that quintessentially, I think it would have made a lot more sense for basically them to push it out a little bit earlier in the year instead of pushing it to April, because people are going to want to forget about the end of 2024 and people kind of want to know what happened. I don't think people are going to care as much if you put the end of 2024 in the beginning of April. It would make a lot more sense for this season to basically come out in the first week of February around the time the Clash happens or the week after the Super Bowl during Daytona 500 week. I think that's when it should have been officially released. And the fact that we're going to have to wait a little bit more time now for the second season NASCAR Full Speed to come out is definitely really disappointing. And it sadly shows that NASCAR is kind of second fiddle to other things, which is really, really unfortunate because I do believe that NASCAR Full Speed, the first season, was an absolute barn burner for the show. And I'm glad to see that they're bringing it back. But again, at the same token and same time, I do think that them waiting so long to get it out and get it released is definitely really unfortunate to see. But at the same token, same time, I'm also not really shocked or surprised to see this because I think we all kind of want to see it come back for a second season, but I'm also, again, not shocked or surprised to see that it's going to take a lot longer for Season 2 to come out, unfortunately, but I'm also disappointed, too, to see this as well because I think we all kind of wanted to come out earlier, but it seems like we're going to be waiting a little bit. I wonder what drivers we're going to be getting. Chase Elliott probably not going to be involved this much. We know Kyle Busch, since he didn't make the playoffs, won't be involved in it either. I'd hope we get to see people like Kyle Larson a little more consistent consistently and get to see people like Brad Keselowski and maybe even other individuals like Ty Gibbs and maybe even Martin Truex Jr. as well in his final year. We'll see what ends up happening, but it looks like the show will be out a little bit later in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Christopher Bell. Now, this is something that I originally kind of talked about on the channel, I believe about a week or so ago, but it was reported by jski.com earlier today. And according to reports, it sounds like that Christopher Bell is interested in running the Indy 500. Now, that would be the case if, of course, Toyota does end up going back to IndyCar in the future. Now, over the course of the last couple of years, there have been rumors and speculation about Toyota potentially making a return to IndyCar. They, of course, did race in IndyCar in the Champ Car Series and the main Indy Series for many, many years. But unfortunately, I think they left around 2005 or 2006. So a very long time ago, they were racing, of course, in IndyCar. But the rumors about a year or so ago that IndyCar was looking to find a third manufacturer. They've been searching for that third manufacturer a long time. Since, of course, they haven't had a new manufacturer since Chevrolet came in around 2011 or 2012. Now, Christopher Bell obviously said that if Toyota does come in, that would be the way for him to run the Indianapolis 500. Now, Christopher Bell, in my opinion, is one driver that I definitely would love to see run the Indy 500. Other people like to see are Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was interested in running it a few years ago. I know there was a chance it could have happened down the road. I know Denny Hamlin spoke about some interest in it, and Shane Van Gisbergen's another driver, or even Conor Zilch too, are other drivers I definitely would love to see run the Indy 500. But Christopher Bell is one of the best talents in the field. He's up there with Kyle Larson on the extreme talent level, and someone who I think has been really good with Joe Gibbs Racing over the course of the last couple of years. Now, recently, Joe Gibbs Racing did lift the dirt ban, but I think that it's going to be harder for them to basically lift that dirt, basically go to the Indy 500 run, as it was more difficult for that. Now we are seeing Joe Gibbs Racing be a little more open now. So let's say Toyota does somehow find a way to get into the Indy 500 and run an IndyCar program. I think it'd be really cool to see Christopher Bell run the Indy 500 with the talent he has. Again, it would have to be a Toyota-backed team. And right now, there's no Toyota-backed teams in IndyCar currently at the moment. And Toyota or Honda are big competitors at the moment. Now, I do remember a few years ago, Kyle Busch kind of talked about this, that Joe Gibbs basically is a major reason why he didn't get the chance and opportunity to run the Indy 500. He apparently had interest from a couple organizations like Aaron McLaren a few years ago, and of course had interest from running the Indy 500 with Team Penske in a fourth or fifth car back, I believe, in 2018 or 2019, when Kyle Busch was a lot better driver than he is now, but obviously that did not end up happening. But I think we're going to see more NASCAR drivers get the chance and opportunity down the road because Kyle Larson, of course, ran the Indy 500, and he's going to run the Indy 500 again in 2025. I really hope we do get to see him run the Indy 500 in the future. I think Christopher Bell is a driver that's capable enough to be super, super competitive and be a major, major threat if he got the chance and opportunity. And I think it'd be really fun for him to get that shot and opportunity to run the Indy 500 down the road. It would have to be with a team that is part of the Toyota group, unless Joe Gibbs Racing somehow does find a way to run the Indy 500 down the road. But I think a lot of us want to see it end up happening, and we'll see down the road if we do get to see Christopher Bell run it. I'd love to see Christopher Bell get the chance and opportunity, get a few of the Joe Gibbs Racing drivers like a Chase Briscoe, or maybe in a Bubba Wallace down the road, get the chance to run Indy 500. That'd be really cool as well. And maybe down the road, they'll be racing against Haley Deegan, even though I don't think Deegan will probably make it. So we'll see what happens down the road, and we'll see if we do see him maybe get to run the Indy 500 in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2311 Front Row and NASCAR lawsuit. Now, it was announced a couple days ago, about a week ago, I should say, that 2311 and Front Row, for the second time, are going to be filing a preliminary injunction after they removed the open team clause. Now, basically, they wanted to get a certain schedule update on when they wanted things done. The teams, I believe, wanted it originally done on December 6th. NASCAR wanted their response by December 9th. Teams wanted their response, I believe, by December 8th or 9th. NASCAR wanted their response, I believe, by the 12th. And then, of course, the court date being to be determined. This comes after 2011 Front Row revealed. They basically at the time had about 3 weeks and about 2.5 weeks to make a decision on the charter purchases. And if they can't get that done earlier, they want the Stewart-Haas Racing charter purchase to not be part of the antitrust stuff going forward. Well, we got confirmation on Wednesday, I believe, that 2311 Front Row have kind of lost the early side of this. NASCAR's response will be due December 9th. So about a week from now, on Monday, December 9th, the first response from NASCAR will be officially due. The team's reply is due on Monday, December the 12th, or basically Thursday, December the 12th. and the hearing is still to be determined at this point. The teams wanted the hearing, I believe, on December 20th or December 21st. I'd have to think the hearing, if it's going to happen, it could happen a lot later. The judge is the one who will make the decision on that front. Let's go back through all this stuff. 2011 and Front Row, of course, are suing NASCAR on antitrust claims. The teams are wanting a little bit more money, which, of course, we know the teams are expected to get 50% of the revenue. That was confirmed by some people from the NASCAR side. You've got Chris Yates, who is the lawyer for NASCAR, while the teams have Jeffrey Kessler, who's been involved in a lot of antitrust lawsuits over the years, siding with a lot of organizations instead of working with the sports that he has been involved in. So far throughout the lawsuit at this point, I do think NASCAR has had the advantage. Both sides have presented their sides. 2011 Front Row have brought their evidence and their claims with letters, among other things. Well, NASCAR has presented their evidence as well, and they've had a pretty strong case on their end as well of the bargain. When I look at the situation with the lawsuit, right, I think a lot of people definitely want 2011 and Front Row to win the lawsuit. Obviously, one thing that kind of got held up until recently is Riley Herbst was announced about 2 weeks ago that he'd be joining 2011 full-time for 2025. We also are expecting that Zane Smith more than likely will be joining Spire Motorsports for the 2025 season in a third full-time entry, though I know NASCAR Nostalgia brought up recently that basically they heard that Zane may not be full-time with the program because of the lawsuit going on at this current moment in time. When I think of this case and situation, I think it's been really wild to watch this story blow out. I don't think a year ago we would have thought that we'd see a lawsuit going on. And I think as time progresses and goes on, I think both sides will be able to present their stuff. I think they're also going to be able to provide in their preliminary injunction run, they could not run a fourth car. They had been talking about running Mark Truex Jr. in the Daytona 500 in a fourth 2311 racing car. That's obviously not happening now because of the fact that they're going to run 3 open cars at this time. Obviously, the charter agreement, the current charter agreement that we have for 2024 will be ending very, very soon, and that new charter agreement for 7 years will be coming into play, and as of now, 2011 and Front Row do not have their charters. They want the preliminary injunction so they compete as chartered organizations for 2025, despite the fact that they never signed the charter agreement. Obviously, that fourth car could be run for Corey Heim in 2025, maybe Carlos Kerber if they ever wanted to return. But I do think for 2011 and Front Row, they really are hoping they can get the preliminary injunction down the road so they can be able to compete as charter organizations, like I said, despite the fact they never signed the charter agreement. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the rest of the lawsuit going forward. Obviously, I really would like to see the teams win, but I think NASCAR so far has also presented some really good claims and some really good evidence to kind of back their side, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about manufacturers. Now, this originally comes from an article from Oskaninsky from the Motorsports Wire. And he reports something that we heard a couple weeks ago during NASCAR's State of the Sport address. It sounds like NASCAR might be getting close to adding a fourth manufacturer for the NASCAR Cup Series, but during the State of Sport address, Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell really never gave specific details of what manufacturers could be eventually joining. Now, this has been a topic of conversation. It's been a little controversial over the last couple of years because we've been hearing about a new manufacturer over the last couple of years. Now, over through 2024, early in the year, one of the biggest topics of conversation to come up was a potential possibility of Honda joining the NASCAR Cup Series, but it's kind of been radio silent since about the middle of the year, around June or July was the last time we heard it, and they basically confirmed that the only way they're going to join NASCAR is if they add a hybrid system. Now, according to what NASCAR Nostalgia had reported not too long ago, it does sound like there's a chance that a new hybrid component could be added to the NASCAR Cup Series in the future around 2026 or 2027. Now, let's say a new manufacturer would come to the NASCAR Cup Series. What year would they come? Well, unless it's been secretly going on, the earliest we probably would see a new manufacturer come in is 2027, because the new bodies don't have to be approved till September of 2025 for the 2027 season. Unless, of course, they've been developing it, but the radio chatter would have been very, very high, and basically the industry would have been talking a lot more if we've been getting closer to this new manufacturer. So I think a lot of people like myself are kind of saying at this point, I'll believe it when I see it. But let's say a new manufacturer does come into the sport. What are the most likely manufacturers that could come in? One of those is Honda. Honda's been rumored really since around 2005 or 2006 that they were going to join the NASCAR Cup Series, and we heard outside chatter around 2019 or 2020, and we continue to hear chatter about the possibility of Honda coming back to the sport. Obviously, Honda is interested. Apparently, executives were at the Daytona 500 earlier this year, and I certainly think Honda will be one of those manufacturers that could come in. I thought maybe there would be a chance that Andretti Global would be one of those organizations, but then with now them working with Cadillac and with them working with GM a lot closer, I don't think that's going to happen. So if Andretti comes in, it's probably going to be with Spire Motorsports, which I think is very, very possible. And speaking of Cadillac, I think they'd be another manufacturer that could find their way into the sport. But instead of being officially a new manufacturer, they could be the replacement for Chevy. We don't know what the future Chevrolet is past 2025, though they are working on the new Chevy body for 2026, which we don't know at this point what the new Chevy body is going to be for 2026. But I think when it comes to that, another manufacturer is Hyundai. Hyundai's been another manufacturer that's been conversated as a potential possibility, and I think Hyundai would be definitely a really good manufacturer that could be a really good possibility as well, considering NASCAR stated publicly multiple times they like to not only have one new manufacturer, but two new manufacturers. Then people are going to bring up Dodge. Well, I think it'd be really awesome and cool for Dodge to make a comeback since Dodge has not been in the sport since 2012. At the same time, I don't think that Dodge really is looking to upgrade their portfolio in motorsports at this point. They were going to be in that electric series that Travis Pastrana was running with Nitrocross, and that series, I believe, has basically been discontinued at this point. So that new Dodge they were building up for that really is not going to be coming into play. So I think Dodge would be cool, but I don't think, especially with them being so focused on electric at this point, I don't think it's very likely that we're going to see them eventually come in. But at the same token, same time, when it comes to new manufacturers, again, it's one of those things like, I'll believe it when I see it. Do I want to see a new manufacturer come to the sport, a new OEM? I think most of us would love to see a new one. But we've been hearing this conversation now for multiple years and multiple months. Do I think it's very likely we could get one for like 2027? Definitely, for sure. I'm going to say right now 60 to 40 likelihood, and I think 60% likely and 40% not likely at this point. And once more conversations do come out about this, we do see a new potential manufacturer come into play, I think a lot of us would really, really love to see that. So we'll see if a new manufacturer does come into play down the road, but it's kind of like I'll believe when I see it at this point, but hopefully maybe down the road we do see some change and maybe Honda decides to join, which I think Honda would be a really good manufacturer to potentially join the sport in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Will Brown. It's been reported by JSki.com, Supercars, and a couple Speed Cafe articles that it sounds like Will Brown is in talks to run a couple NASCAR Cup Series races in 2025. Now, Will Brown won the most races Supercars Championship in 2024, but also did make his NASCAR Cup Series debut earlier this year at Sonoma, where he showed some really good pace and speed. It was near the top 10, but unfortunately got taken out due to electrical issues and gremlins. Will Brown is another one of these drivers in the Supercar Series, so I think would down the road be very interested in coming to NASCAR full-time, considering the success of Shane Van Gisbergen in the NASCAR Cup Series. And of course, he'll go full-time with Trackhouse Racing and be teammates with Dale Swartz and Ross Chastain. Now, we'll talk about this, but where could Will Brown end up going to in 2025? The most likely destination for Will Brown for the 2025 season is Richard Childress Racing. That was the team he drove for in 2024 at Sonoma Raceway. And I think that's the team he'll end up driving for, considering it's been rumored that RCR is going to run a third entry in many events throughout the 2025 year. We have heard that Jesse Love, Austin Hill, and of course we've also heard recently Chandler Smith could be a candidate to drive in the Cup Series for them as well for 2025. But I think Will Brown driving a third RCR car would be really, really huge. And I think if they could bring a car that doesn't have any mechanical issues or problems, could lead to Will Brown having a really good chance and opportunity to win. Now, what tracks could Will Brown end up racing? Well, most likely they'll end up being road course races. There's a lot of good options for road course races. Number one, I think, is Sonoma or the Chicago Street Course. Also Mexico City too. I believe Mexico City is around the time where Supercars is not happening, and of course he's going to be back, I think, with the Red Bull group for 2025. So I think that the Mexico City race would be a really, really good option. I think he'd be super, super competitive at that race, because one type of track that RCR actually saw some really good pace and speed throughout 2024 is the road courses. And I think another track we could see is Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen was a really good track for Shane Van Gisbergen, and of course won and then picked up the victory, or didn't win the race, but he did end up finishing in second and finishing in the top 5 in the Xfinity race. I could see that being a really good track for Will Brown to go to. What about COTA? COTA basically had some experience with that. I don't think Will Brown competed in that supercar race, if I'm not mistaken, so I'm not exactly sure if we would go to that event. But I think that Will Brown getting a couple starts would be really, really huge. Now, let's say this does truly end up happening. What are my expectations for Will Brown? Well, I don't think Will Brown's going to go out there and win any of these races, but I think a top 5 and a top 10 is certainly possible. RCR, like I said, has a really solid speedway road course program. Kyle Busch proved that throughout 2024, where he had a couple really strong runs, and I think that Will Brown could be super, super competitive, and I'd like to see this happen. I would definitely also love to see him go to the Chicago Street Course and compete there. See him and Shane Van Gisbergen race against each other, against guys like Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, maybe Bubba Wallace, and maybe other drivers as well, like Ryan Preece down the road, because Ryan Preece is not that bad of a road course racer, and even Chris Buescher as well, who's a pretty dang good road course racer in his own way and right. But I think it's cool to see that we're seeing more supercar drivers come over and race in the sport. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen being very successful from the other series and coming over in his own way and being successful. Cam Waters making select NASCAR Truck Series starts and, of course, making his Cup Series debut earlier this year. And I would have to think there's a chance he could also run in a few events as well. We've seen Brody Kosecki make a couple starts in the Cup Series, and I certainly think that he could be someone who could also come over and drive that car for RCR, though I do think the Erebus people are not very happy for RCR. So I don't know if that is going to be super possible at this point. But I think we need to see more people like a Chaz Mostert come over, because I want to see more of the supercar drivers come over. And having talented drivers like Will Brown, who are very, very good drivers who have won the supercar events and supercar championships, because we talk about the supercars, but NASCAR kind of designed the NASCAR Next Gen car after kind of like a GT3 car for supercars, which, let's be real and honest, the racing in GT3 for supercars isn't the greatest in the world. But at the end of the day, having Will Brown come over and potentially race in the sport once again, to me, is absolutely huge. And I think most fans, especially from Australia, would absolutely love this. Again, I think he will drive for RCR in a few events. The question is, which races will he end up driving? We'll have to wait and see. But I'd have to think that announcement is coming down the road. We might also see some NASCAR Cup drivers down the road go and run some supercar races. There was talk about Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson running, I believe, the wild card Adelaide 500. Obviously, of course, it did not end up happening. We know Kyle Larson is going over there to Australia for a high-limit event, so I certainly do think that it'd be cool to see more NASCAR Cup drivers, especially as well down the road, get the chance and opportunity to maybe run some supercar events. But I think it's really cool to see that Will Brown is likely going to be coming back and making a few starts in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think he can be very, very successful if they can bring the right equipment and bring the right attention to detail. I think, though, he could, I'd love to see him maybe down the road go full-time NASCAR, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's fully focused on supercars at the moment, but maybe, just maybe down the road, we could see someone like a Will Brown get the chance and opportunity to drive more than 2 Cup starts, but it sounds like as of right now, he is going to make 2 NASCAR Cup Series starts for the 2025 year, which I think is really exciting and really good. We'll see when it officially gets announced, but I think it will happen for him for 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Rajah Caruth. Now, a couple days ago, I believe on Wednesday or Thursday, Rajah Caruth put out a tweet thanking the fans for the support throughout 2024, and also thanked the fans for helping him win the Most Popular Driver Award in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, but also indicated that he is likely cooking something up for the 2025 season. Now, Rajah Caruth is one of those drivers that has not officially confirmed their plans for the 2025 season. However, it sounds very likely at the moment that Rajah Caruth will be back with Spire Motorsports in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series for 2025. There's also a chance and possibility that Rajah Caruth could maybe make his NASCAR Cup Series debut at some point for 2025, as it is rumored that Spire Motorsports may be running a 4th Cup Series car in select events for 2025. Like I said, it's very likely he'll be back with Spire next year. Now, Rajah Caruth in 2024 showed a lot of progress in 2023. He, of course, picked up his first career NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series win early in the year at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and had a lot of top 5s and top 10s early in the year. Of course, finished third at Daytona, ran pretty solidly at Atlanta, finishing inside the top 10, then winning at Vegas and nearly winning a couple events later in the year, nearly winning at Bristol, finishing second to Lane Riggs in a really great photo finish against Corey Heim, and then, of course, being really good at Nashville, getting a top 5 finish and showing some really strong pace and really good speed throughout the year. I don't think, and I know there was talk about him maybe moving up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series for 2025. And while I do think that Rajah showed a lot of improvement and did make the playoffs this year, let's be real and honest, I don't think Rajah Caruth is ready to fully go full-time NASCAR Xfinity Series racing for 2025. Now, could we see Rajah Caruth maybe make some select NASCAR Xfinity Series starts at Hendrick Motorsports next year? That is certainly a possibility, and I have to think, especially with Hendrick always running the 17 car, which I think Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, and William Brown will get behind the wheel at some point. I do think they will bring that car back. But I think Rajah is about a year or two away from really making that jump up to Xfinity and being pretty solid and pretty successful. I think Rajah is one of the most talented drivers out there, and I think he'll be pretty good with the team in 2025. Now, what are my realistic expectations? I think Rajah could not only win one race in 2025, but I think he have multiple wins, and I think there's a good chance he could make the championship four. With Spire Motorsports continuing to improve and get a lot better, I do believe that he could be someone that could lead Spire Motorsports to a lot of success. Now, the other big question is, who could his teammates be for 2025? There's been a lot of drivers who've been rumored to this program. Kaz Grall's name has been mentioned because it's likely he won't be back with Rick Ware Racing for 2025 because it's either going to be Cody Ware or Corey LaJoie behind the wheel of the full-time ride. There's been rumors about Parker Reslaf recently, even though we've also heard Alf Prime is an option. Parker would be a really good teammate for Raj. I think they're really good friends too. So Parker going to Spire would be a really great opportunity. We have also heard they're going to run an all-star truck for Kyle Busch, potentially Butterbean Queen, who I think could be a Pinnacle Racing Group in ARCA. And then, of course, Michael McDowell and Carson Ospar have been linked. And we also have heard that Andres Perez de Laura could also be an option for this team in 2025. But we are also expecting that Chase Purdy will not be back with this program for the 2025 season. We're not even sure if he's going to have a ride currently for 2025. As for Rajah, though, he is a driver who has shown so much promise and a lot of potential in the Truck Series over the course of the last couple of years, and I really think he will be a contender for top 5s and top 10s on a week-by-week basis. He's someone that can carry equipment, and I think he can do a really, really good job. There are things, though, he's definitely going to have to work on. His racecraft has continued to improve. His racecraft has continued to get better. He's getting closer and closer to being that next big superstar, in my opinion. I really think he has massive, massive potential because, one, he engages with the fans extremely well and is really good with the fan base especially. But number two, he's someone that can really, I think, really take the sport to the next level. That's why he's one of the most popular driver work, because people can see the hard work he puts into the garage and everything he does behind the scenes and all the work he does put in. I really believe that Rajah is going to be someone next year who is going to be challenging drivers throughout the season. I think there's a really good chance he will make the championship four. I think he was very close to making it this year. Had there been some more playoff points coming in and more stage wins for him, I think he could have made the championship four in 2024. But I think for 2025, he is going to be a championship contender. I think he's going to be tough to beat Corey Heim. I think he's going to be really the guy to beat, that being Corey Heim, because Heim, of course, will be back in the Truck Series, and you got guys like Daniel Heimer coming down and running full-time. But at the end of the day, I really think Rajah is going to have a very strong and solid year, and I do expect that Rajah will be quick enough to be a major, major threat for the 2025 season. So, like I said, we're likely expecting him to go back to Spire, and I do think he'll be pretty solid, pretty competitive, and really, really fast. We'll see what Rajah Caruth can do with this team in 2025. So, that is going to be it for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. How do you think Rajah will do with Spire once again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And how do you think Will Brown will do with RCR next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel is either going to be a silly season update or the RFK Racing preview is going to be dropping. Wednesday there should be a NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last couple days. If there's any major news that breaks throughout the weeks as we, of course, get closer to Christmas, we'll just talk about it here. And I also might be doing a Christmas Q&A, so keep an eye on that official announcement that could be coming very soon as we close out the final month of 2024 and push into 2025. I've got content coming on people like Connor Zilch, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Bubba Walls, the lawsuit, Kyle Larson, and Kyle Busch too, and Chase Elliott down the road coming very soon that you should be seeing on the channel in the coming days. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.